Welcome to another episode of Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hettiger, and I am easily starting this episode with a big smile on my face because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, wine. As I've gotten older, I have realized that wine can make just an ordinary dinner into a really special memory. It can elevate a celebration, and it can just bring people together. But I've also realized that wine can sometimes feel intimidating. You're looking at all the stuff on the back. You don't fully know what it means. You look at the price tag. What do I go with here? So we are going to learn a lot together from one of St. Louis's own wine experts, one of our dear friends on Great Day St. Louis, Mike Ward of Ward on Wine. It's good to see you, sir.
So great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
I am thrilled to have you. We were talking off camera that you've been coming on Great Day for 12 years now.
Yes.
And during that time, I have learned so much from you because
Thank you. That makes me happy.
It makes me happy because, as I mentioned in that intro, wine can feel intimidating to people.
It can.
But you have a whole career in it.
I do, and it's kind of been a very rewarding career. I really love to inspire people if you want to learn more, to go on that journey about learning more about wine. But also, most importantly, is the casual wine drinker, making them feel really comfortable with whatever choices that they want to make about wine, never intimidating them, and really making them know that if you like sweet wine or dry wine, whites or reds, or all the above, I'm going to find something for you.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned you are from St. Louis. You moved here when you were 2 years old.
Yes.
So I think you're officially a St. Louisan now.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Will you share some of your background about your career and how it's evolved in the wine industry?
It started for me, people kind of say, for people in the wine industry, what was that wine or that thing that happened? And many times you can kind of pinpoint that thing that happens that sparks the interest. And mine started at a very young age. I was working at the Marriott Pavilion Hotel, which is now called the Hilton Ballpark Hotel. Mm-hmm. And this is 1982, the Cardinals World Series, so the old stadium. And I was working in the bar, and I was going to UMSL, which was problematic because working in the bar back then were late hours, and then school was, then the next day. But that hotel had a fine dining restaurant. And this was the first time in my life that I really was seeing labels of wine from these romantic, faraway places like France, and wondering, what is this? I'd never had wine before, of course. I was 19 years old, but it was interesting to me. And so, that really started that interest. And it wasn't the alcohol content. It really, and still isn't today. It's the curiosity behind where did those grapes grow and why, who made that wine, and what makes it taste the way that it does. Mm-hmm. And it really was that first experience being around wine and engaged in the wine industry mm-hmm. that got it started for me.
Because at the heart of it, it is all about the agriculture, the farming that goes into the grapes and making the final product what it is right in front of us.
Right. And the 6,000 to 8,000 years of winemaking that humans have been, had their throughout history. Mm-hmm. And then you can now, because I love history, mm-hmm. you can look at the history of places like Italy, France, or here in Missouri, and trace back to families making wine for different reasons, and the grapes that they used, and the flavor profiles mm-hmm. that were created when grapes grow in that environment.
And honestly, wine goes back even further. I'm going through the Bible, and just recently I got to the passage where they're at the wedding and Jesus turned the water into wine. So people have been studying this for many, many years.
Trying to imagine what grapes those were used for that. I've heard stories about what those are. I'm going to guess that it probably tastes a little bit sweet, and that's why people liked it.
There
Just
you
going to
go.
make that guess.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind as I keep going through the Bible. Now they're drinking sweet wine, Laura. Let's talk about how your career has evolved. You started out at the hotel back in 1982. You got this deep appreciation for wine. What happens next in your career that allows you to learn even more about it?
Well, I progressed through restaurant industry, managing restaurants, always working in the front of the house, never in the kitchen. It's not something that I felt like I had the talent to do, work in a kitchen, and I always felt like I wanted to be out working in the dining room, talking to people, managing and general managing restaurants that had good beverage programs, and just interacting with people at a table, talking about what foods they were ordering and maybe what cocktails or wine that they would enjoy. And that's really where it progressed. Not yet in the education side, because that came later for me, but really in more of the hospitality and guest enjoyment type of industry, working in restaurants.
And would you often make recommendations based on what food they were interested in that night?
Yeah, now that I look back on it and I know so much more about wine, I don't know that all my recommendations were that accurate, but I would at least try. And I knew the food that we had in our restaurant, and it made choices that would help people kind of navigate through it, because there are no wrong choices. What do you like is the first question. And then once you find out what someone likes, you can really help them go in that direction to make the right choice.
I'm so glad you mentioned that early in this conversation, because just the other day, my husband and I went out to dinner for Mother's Day with our 2 kids, which even doing that is a commitment. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But we did go to a steakhouse, and our plan was to get a steak and share it. And I thought, okay, I'm getting a steak. Should I get a red wine? And I thought, no, it's Mother's Day. I like white wine.
Sure.
But then I did think, are they going to judge me? Should I absolutely go with a red? You're sitting here saying maybe red would bring out flavor more, I'd assume. But if I wanted that white, don't talk myself out of it.
Yes, you made the right choice, because you should drink what you like. Always drink what you like. Now, you do also should understand that it may not be the best pairing with food, and the food may overpower the wine, and in some cases the wine could overpower the food, say if you had red wine with a light seafood. However, wanting people to enjoy the wines they like, I'll never be critical of someone who just orders what they like with the food that they like. I'll always say, well, red wine would go better with the steak and complement the steak a little bit more, but don't let that be your, the way that you choose. Because I don't want you to sit there at the table and hate that red wine that I just recommended for you if you only drink like white wines, dry white wines, or sweet wines. So I think it's good for the conversation. To get people engaged and interested in what they're drinking. And you can develop a palate for red wine, even if you don't like it, by having it with food. That's how your palate changes with wine and food together. But hey, if you're drinking wine, you're okay with me.
I was fine with it too.
Yeah.
And what's really cool, you say maybe now that you know so much more, you could probably go back, redo a few of the suggestions you've made in the past when you were working in restaurants. But I have a feeling you also made people open their eyes to a lot of different ones that they typically wouldn't have ordered. And you've worked at some really big restaurants and hotels in St. Louis. Will you share some of that background?
Yes. Moving on from the Marriott, I did spend a few years working in Kirkwood, Missouri at a kind of an Irish pub theme restaurant. I was in my early 20s, and it's Mike Duffy's in Kirkwood, which I spent a wonderful time there when he first opened it. Now, that didn't necessarily have an extensive wine list, but that was a different part of my career. I moved on from there and did jump into more of restaurant-centric or wine list-centric restaurants like Remy's in Clayton, which is really one of the most fun restaurant experiences that I had, because the wine list Now it's 22 years ago, and sadly it's no longer there. But the wine list was fun, innovative, educational, and really gave the diners options of wines that they wouldn't experience on their own at the time. And I've also sort of dabbled in the hotel industry a little bit. But really, when I left the restaurant industry is when my knowledge of wine increased. I had to kind of get out of that restaurant industry to open up the education part of it.
I worked in a bar in undergrad, and then I worked in a restaurant in grad school. It was very hard, very hard. You're constantly on your feet. You're always interacting with people, sometimes on great days, sometimes on really bad days, and they come and sometimes take out their frustration from the world on you.
Can happen, yes.
So the restaurant industry is very grueling. I'm guessing that weighed on you.
It is physically and mentally taxing, and grueling is a good way to put it. It was in my blood. I really loved it, and still do. When I go back and do wine dinners and things like that, it's my chance to kind of get back into it for one night. But it does take a toll, and what diners who are not in the industry, you probably understand this too, is to know that you're there for hours before that we open, and you're there for hours after the restaurant closes. So it's a lot of hours, and it physically demanding job to ensure that people are being taken care of the right way, and that does, after a while, it I always say it's kind of a younger person's industry, but then they may be able to work 80 hours a week, but it's going to catch up with them at some point. But it's a fun industry too.
Right around 40, you decided to pivot in your career. Where did wine take you on the next part of your career?
Well, I knew that I had this love and appreciation for wine, history, geography behind wine, and the story and families behind wine. That was always my draw to the wine industry. So when I knew that my career in restaurants probably should come to an end, I thought, well, let me reinvent myself. Not necessarily thinking teaching and education at that point. That opened up a year or so later. But I realized I needed to go work somewhere, and I worked for a Missouri distributor, a privately owned distributor in Missouri called Major Brands, and worked in their specialty wine division. And shortly after coming on board with them, that's actually where I passed my first exam to become an introductory sommelier in the Court of Master Sommeliers. And I did really well on it. That it was a tough test, but it was like this door just opened of this is now what I want to do. This, any kind of restaurant burnout was now gone, and my life just kind of unfolded that exams, teaching, certifications, and understanding a little bit more about wine was where I wanted to put myself.
So you do the introductory level.
Introductory for the sommelier. And you can't even, at that level, technically call yourself a sommelier.
So what do the tests and the classes look like?
Well, they are all challenging. You are taking an examination that covers wines from all over the world. And typically when it's a legitimate organization, and there are several that we can discuss, they always have a competency around France first, because to understand wine on that level, you have to understand where many of the grape varieties that we're used to come from, which is Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, and regions of France. And if you're not, if that's new for you, it takes a while to understand them. There are other exams that involve tasting, which is like preparing for a marathon to take an exam where you have to taste wine. And then the sommelier exam specifically also has a service component, which is really stressful because you're opening wine for a master sommelier as they ask you questions, and they are rightfully so really challenging you. So you have to be really ready for that type of exam.
Thinking on your feet, but also physically opening it where I'm guessing you don't really want to break the cork off. That's probably a bad thing. Or
That
spill
would
the
be a
wine
failure.
on them.
Yeah. To become a certified sommelier, which is the next level, which is an exam I took in 2008, that is an exam where you take a written test, and then you come back and you blind taste 2 wines, a white wine and a red wine, and they score you on how well you can identify the region, the grape variety, and the vintage. And your method also is scored. So how you come about your answer is scored for that exam. And then you come back in for the service component.
So I want to go back to the taste test.
Sure.
Because I'm envisioning, if I did a taste test, I could easily tell you these are McDonald's French fries, these are Chick-fil-A French fries, these are Burger King French fries. Great, found out all of them. That was pretty easy.
Be a French fry sommelier.
There I should be. That's going to be my next career. But for you, are you saying you walk in, do they give you any region it could be, or could it be any wine in the world, and you are expected to say, well, this is France, the Burgundy region?
Yeah. Yes, that's how it works. And it could be most wines in the world, except that they're probably not going to put something from Missouri in front of you. Mm-hmm. But it could be California, Australia, South America, or anywhere in France. And it's usually a classic wine. And when I say classic wine, I mean a Bordeaux. Chianti is a classic wine. It's not going to be a sparkling wine. You sit down and there's a white wine and a red wine in front of you. And back then, I think we had 20 minutes total. So it is a timed exam. And the white wine is freezing cold. So that's hard to discern what the wine is when wine is freezing cold. And you have to use your instincts. Now, I mean, I have some allergy problems living in Missouri, so I kind of struggle with that a little bit. But you have to use your training and instincts to identify, what that wine is. And it's challenging. It's interesting. It's fun, but it's also very stressful.
I would think so.
I can set one up for you if you'd ever like to do it.
I would love to do that. And St. Louis, I know you would love to as well. Before we take our first commercial break, if people are curious, where can they find more information about you and the classes that you offer?
I would say please email me. Our business name is Ward on Wine, that my wife Mary and I own, Mike at Ward on Wine. And you can also get on our Facebook page as well to get some more information.
Mike at wardonwine.com. Perfect email. But we are going to take our first break. And as we do this, I would encourage you to share this conversation with anyone that you know who likes wine, who is curious about it, who just wants to find out more. So for me, that's like all of my girlfriends. I will be texting this to them once the show is over. You're watching Live with Laura. We'll be right back. This is a conversation I have been excited about for a very long time as I sit across from Mike Ward of Ward on Wine, who has been on Great Day St. Louis and My St. Louis Live a slew of times over the last dozen or so years. And every time we are not on camera, I start asking you all these questions about different wineries, different wines, but also how I'm supposed to taste a wine. If you wouldn't mind, would you please describe how, when we are in social settings, we are supposed to handle a glass of wine that's being poured?
Well, first of all, I would tell people to enjoy it first. Mm-hmm. When I describe studying for and taking an exam, that is not wine enjoyment. That is practice and research and a different type of wine tasting. Not that you don't enjoy it, but it's very different level. I would say for people who are beginners, novices, or even people who have been drinking wine for a long time and really know what they like, a couple of things to appreciate is the temperature of the wine, because we tend to, in the U.S. and certainly here in the Midwest, drink white wine very cold.
Yes.
And we drink red wine warmer than it should be. And really adjusting the temperature, white wine's 10 or 15 degrees warmer than you normally drink it, will open up the aromas, the flavors, the bouquet of the wine, and also, especially in summer, chilling that red wine just a little bit will help it to not taste like alcohol, but taste like all the things that it should be. So the one thing, to respond to your, more enjoyment or your casual experience with wine is to make sure you are smelling it. That's really where most of the enjoyment comes from wine. So a glass that's filled to the rim, you're really not enjoying that wine the best way. A small amount of wine in a larger glass where you can fill that bowl of the glass with the aromas and really get all those aromas, because grapes, once fermented, don't smell like grapes anymore. They smell like so many other things. So we should be enjoying wine that way. Adjust the temperature a little bit, and now when you actually taste it, you really are going to take that wine that you spent some good money on, and you're going to really understand how to enjoy it better.
I think my husband and I do a good job of that when we are having a glass or opening a bottle of wine at home, because we have that time. I'll know that maybe he wants a red blend or a Pinot Noir. So I will open that before he gets home, because I've always heard and been told that it should breathe.
Sure.
But then when I find ourselves at restaurants, maybe with a group of people, and you order a bottle of wine, they come over and open it, and then they pour it right away. And then I'm always like, so am I supposed to be sniffing first? Am I swirling first? Is this all for show? Am I being judged? Will you please walk us through that situation?
Okay. Here is what I would recommend everybody listening who likes to order wine in the restaurant. Okay, it's going to get you out of your comfort zone a little bit and make you do some things you're not normally used to doing. Okay, so first thing when you get to the restaurant is order the wine. Understanding if you are going to have a steak, if it's a steakhouse, maybe it's a seafood restaurant, you're going to have seafood, order the wine first. If you're going to order a bottle of wine, have the server bring the bottle of wine, open it, pour it into the glasses, and now the rest of the meal, the actual ordering comes in. Maybe you have a cocktail to start, or maybe you're just drinking water. Now that wine has roughly 20 minutes or so to breathe and open up and really get ready for you when your dinner. So if your dinner arrives and the wine is being opened at the same time, you're really not getting the full enjoyment of that wine. And think of it, you're paying a lot of money for it. You want to enjoy it at its best. At home, you can manage this experience so easy because you can open the wine hours before you actually start cooking. That's easier to do. In a restaurant, it's not like that.
And it's so interesting because you see it too. I know when you go out to restaurants, you see someone open the bottle, then they hand you the glass. How is it? It's good. Great. We all move on. So you're saying right out of the gate, they bring you the water, you look at the wine list, make the decision, and just let it breathe.
Don't you think that people look at the menu first when you go to a restaurant to decide what food you're going to order?
Oh, I have looked at the menu like 3 days prior because I'm that excited to go out to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what I'm going to order before I walk in the door.
With wine and wine lists. So, yeah. And I probably read a wine list longer than a person should and have been told that.
But because it's enjoyable, too, when you read that wine list, and I'm not an expert like you, but when I come across a wine on a wine list that I have had before, or I've been blessed enough to go to that winery in person,
sure.
I do want to go back to it.
Yeah. And that's common, and most people do react that way. I am in the camp of I'm going to drink something different every time. And so especially if sometimes my wife and I are ordering different wines. She doesn't drink the same wines I do many times. So if I order a wine by the glass, it's not going to be the same glass. If I get usually two glasses, maybe start out with something and then go to something else, but it won't be the same glass of wine. In that case, I would also tell people to really smell and taste that glass of wine to make sure the bottle wasn't opened 5 or 6 days ago, and now you have an oxidized wine. And it is okay to send the glass back if it doesn't smell and taste fresh. So oxidation is a problem for wine. So just think about that. Don't think, maybe it's just me, I'll just drink it. There might be something wrong with it, and maybe they have to open up another bottle. Many times staff knows this, but a lot of times they're, might just miss that. So feel free to send it back if it doesn't smell or taste right to you.
I'm glad you give us that permission, because as a casual consumer, that feels bad on our part. And especially with wine, are there other things that you would suggest in looking that might stick out, that if it has been sitting there for a little bit too long?
The problem is most wine will look correct, and it is the smell and then the taste that will throw it off. So wine has, once the bottle's open, maybe 24 to 36 hours, depending on the varietal and the wine, and then it'll start to oxidize. Now, people say, it turns into vinegar. It doesn't really turn into vinegar. That takes a lot longer. It really has some kind of funky, oxidative smells to it that aren't pleasant. It's different for everybody. There's also issues with wine where it could become corked, which means it smells like specifically wet cardboard.
Oh, delicious.
It doesn't happen very much anymore. Really doesn't happen with screw caps. And wine industry has made a lot of efforts to correct that problem. But if your wine ever smells like your basement or someone's basement or wet cardboard, it's not coming back from that. So wine is very delicate. Wine and beer can be ruined depending on their environment. Spirits, vodka, gin, tequila, whiskey, they're stabilized. So a lot of things can happen. They can be open for a very long time. They're going to always taste the same. But with wine, very delicate. So sunlight, heat, cold temperatures, excessive movement, if the bottle's been shaken around a lot, transportation sometimes, those things can affect wine in a negative way.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because something I wanted to get into this conversation too is the age of wines. So many of us buy a nice bottle of wine and we think we're going to save it, we're going to save it, we're going to save it. I have a couple bottles like that at home, and one of my very good friends does too. And when they finally got around to opening it, and they're a bit older than me, so they had had this wine for over a decade. By the time they finally opened it, you say corked, I think their description was it was skunked. Like it was just now bad.
Not pleasant.
Yes.
Yeah. So aging wine is tricky, and it is also a myth that all wine improves with age. It's absolutely not true. It describes just a very small amount of wine. There's some wine from Bordeaux and Burgundy that improve with age. There's, a few regions in the world where grapes can handle aging in a bottle. Vintage ports can age for 30 or 40 years. But, all the wine we make here in Missouri, all the wine they make in California, maybe even Napa Valley, 5 to 7 years, 10 years tops. After that aging time, wine is going to start to transform into dried fruit and herbs, and sometimes a little more musty in its smell and aroma. And most people that are used to drinking younger wines within the last several years really are not going to like those aged types of aromas. In the business, we call them tertiary aromas. They're earthy aromas that can sometimes represent themselves as unpleasant aromas. Now, I don't want to scare anybody. If you got wine at home, it's fine. I would say, though, my advice is, and I'm someone who has wine at home right now that's aged far past the enjoyment time with that wine, and I've made that mistake. And sometimes I'll bring wines like that to class and show people what happens when a wine ages. But my advice is, if you're thinking about that special occasion, make that special occasion. It could have to be a Tuesday night because you should drink it.
Well, it's a Tuesday right now. Now I know
right.
what my husband and I are going to be doing later today.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you broke down the timeline. So an open bottle, 24 to 36 hours.
Roughly. What I would say is, even red wines, if you think I've got half the bottle left, I'm not going to get to this wine tomorrow, put it in the refrigerator. It'll slow down the oxidative process, and then take it out of the refrigerator and it'll be fine. But if you still have that bottle there a week and a half or 2 weeks, it's just not going to be fresh.
I am so glad that you mentioned that about red wine too, because I can't tell you how many times we have kept it out on the counter because it's red wine. I don't feel like I am supposed to put it in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But that can extend the lifespan.
I think so. Yes, it does. And you're not going to drink it at that temperature. You take it out and let it warm up. Don't have to drink it at room temperature. But it will help the process being in the refrigerator. You don't have to leave it on the counter. If you do, it's okay. You're just going to have a little less time with it.
So I'm leaning forward because you did bring 4 different bottles in with you. And when you were getting them out earlier, you mentioned one was a 2020. I believe that's the Cape Red one.
Napa Cabernet.
So that guy should be enjoyed within the next year.
Or so. Like. It's a little bit old, but that is also a vintage where there were fires in Napa Valley. Now, nowhere near where these grapes were growing and this wine was made. But because of that, 2020 vintage is one that any expert would say the wines are great. The vintage was really dry, which is good for grape growing. It was at the end of the season where they had the fires, and there were some vineyards that were affected by that. But those wines probably you should drink sooner rather than later, so within the next 2 to 3 years.
I'm glad you mentioned the fires because without a doubt that has had a huge impact here in America. I don't remember too many in France that might have had a big
Australia
impact.
has also had a big problem with forest fires, yeah.
And I've had conversations with my husband as we're sitting there analyzing wine, not experts, and he will say, "Ooh, I feel like this is smoky." And I'm like, "Do you think it was close to a fire?" And then other times we've been with other people at a wine shop in town, and they were smelling it, and this gentleman goes, "Ooh, I can pick up like hints of asphalt with this wine. It must have been close to a road." And I'm sitting there thinking, what is everyone talking about? Am I nuts? Is that true? Like, if you have that sensitive of a palate, you can pick up the asphalt?
Well, I'll describe it this way. And smoke can damage fruit without the fire actually going through. And you will pick that up later in the wine's life. And it's not a pleasant, smoky type of aroma. Sometimes from oak barrels, you can get a little bit, like in Cabernet, you can get a little smoky, chocolate, nutty type of espresso coffee. And that's okay because remember, the barrel has been toasted. So that's where you might pick up some of that. But there is a common thought among people in the wine industry that the vine's roots growing in the soil, in the gravel, and in the dirt, that some of that minerality will make its way up the roots into the vine and eventually into the grapes, and you'll be able to smell that. Now, there's a lot of people who say, no way, you're just making that up. I kind of believe it because I've been in situations where you can try wines next to each other that were from grapes, same grape variety, grown in different vines in different soil, and you can tell that some of the differences. So I think that is something that you can find. Asphalt, that's described a little bit differently. I don't know that you could really identify that as vines grown next to a road, but won't criticize it from.
We might have criticized it, but we've also joked about it a lot on a random Tuesday when we open up a Sauvignon Blanc. I can taste the asphalt in this. And we have a chuckle, and it takes us back to that memory from that wine shop, which was also truly enjoyable.
Well, one of the best things that's happened this year in the wine industry, because, younger people are trying to get them into wine a little bit more and understanding a little bit more. But recently, the biggest advocate for wine in the world, the best thing that ever happened in the wine industry was Taylor Swift. And she drinks a Sancerre, which is a French Sauvignon Blanc, which has a lot of minerality to it. And that wine was in her movie. And it did, really allow people to experiment with wine. And it opened up a lot of possibilities in the wine industry. So when somebody like that's that influential is drinking wine, that's a good thing for our industry.
So I'm giggling because have you seen the documentary?
I have only seen that part of it.
And it is short.
Yeah.
Where you see the bottle.
Yeah.
Very, very short. So Swifties all over captured it and blasted it out. My best friend in Boston called and said, "Did you see what Taylor Swift's wine is?" I go, "Oh my gosh, no, I missed it." She's like, I have it. I found a bottle. You need to start calling around to see if you can get it. Mike, I kid you not. I called multiple Total Wines. I called multiple private wine shops. My mom and dad go to a wine shop all the time in Effingham, Illinois. We cannot find it anywhere.
Right.
So yes, Taylor is making her mark on the wine industry, and I still haven't tried it yet.
Well, first of all, she's amazing,
Yes,
of course,
yes.
and I'm a big fan. And that wine is a small winery in Sancerre, which is in the Loire region. And I think from what I read, it was two brothers that inherited the winery. I mean, everything sold out the minute that happened.
Yes.
But what I can do is I can recommend wines from neighbors of theirs that may be similar. So Sancerre is available in St. Louis. So we'll talk, and
Okay.
I'll recommend a few for you.
We'll get a Taylor adjacent Sancerre.
Yeah,
for
adjacent. I like that.
For our awesome wine summer that we're about to embark on.
Yes.
I have already learned so much. I did not expect Taylor Swift to come up in this conversation, but I'm thrilled it did. Friends, we are talking with Mike Ward of Ward on Wine. When we come back, we are going to talk about how wine has turned into a huge boom for the travel industry too. And I understand you are very involved in that. So stay tuned. More details on that right after this break. What a fun and enjoyable and insightful episode of Live with Laura this has been because of the gentleman sitting in this chair, Mike Ward of Ward on Wine. Mike, you shared that it was 1982 when you were working at what is now the Ballpark Hilton, and you first got acquainted with wine. For me, the first time I really thought about wine, my parents had planned a trip to Napa, just the two of them.
Sure.
I was in college, and of course I had seen wine, but it never really stuck out to me that, oh my gosh, you have people from the Midwest traveling all the way to California simply to go to wineries. And I got really intrigued at that point, so much so that I've now gone with them a few times. My husband and I did a baby moon to Napa, which I do not recommend because a baby moon is when you're pregnant. So I was the DD for this. But we also built our entire honeymoon around going to different wineries and vineyards. It's amazing that the travel industry is booming because of wine too. And you see that, I'm sure.
I do. The interest level in traveling to Europe to experience wine or to some of the great locations in the U.S. or others. Napa Valley is a beautiful place to visit, but it also is America's Grand Cru vineyards. It's really where our best wines are made. Now, I'm a big supporter of our Missouri wine industry and work with the Missouri Wine and Grape Board in Augusta, Missouri. America's first designated wine region is one of my favorite places in the world. But it's hard to get beyond the beauty and the elegance of the wines in Napa Valley or right across the mountain in Sonoma or the Willamette Valley of Oregon. Brought another wine from the Willamette Valley, which is America's answer to Burgundy in the wines that are made from Pinot Noir. So we do have these great locations to travel to. It just so happens that most places that grow grapes are among the most beautiful places in the world.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned Augusta. Just a couple weeks ago, we were out at Noble Ice Vineyards on a really rainy morning, but yet still it was just gorgeous. And I caught myself saying to one of my coworkers, can you believe this is the Midwest with these views and the vineyards and the hills? It's just spectacular.
I love that winery. They're friends of ours. And I have the honor to be a judge at the Missouri Wine Competition, and I have for the last 4 years. And I can tell you that with great confidence, because we try over 200 wines there as a judge in 2 days. The wines keep getting better and better every year. So I'm excited about the Missouri wine industry, and our future is very bright.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So we talked about Missouri, Napa, Sonoma. Will you please tell me the Oregon one again, because I think I always mispronounce it.
The Willamette Valley.
Willamette.
Many people would want to say Willamette, but it's Willamette. Willamette Valley, just south of Portland. And it is a newer wine region in the U.S. Just its history just dates back into the 1970s and 80s. And before that, people didn't even know we could grow grapes there. And it is world-class Pinot Noir. They also grow Chardonnay and Pinot Gris and a few other grapes. But Pinot Noir has really found a good home there. And now there's about 400 wineries there. And if you have not tried a Willamette Valley or one of its subregions, Pinot Noir, please do. You really will enjoy it.
You've mentioned France with Champagne, Burgundy, Bordeaux, and a few other regions there. You have a true love and appreciation for Italian wines.
I do, and I recently finished my certification as an Italian wine scholar. It was by far the hardest exam that I've ever taken. It was a 2-year journey through Italy. It is what I think is the most complicated country to learn about, because they rely mostly on indigenous grape varieties, meaning grapes that are from there. There's over 650 unique grape varieties just in Italy, and for this exam, I might have had to known about many of them because they might pop up on the exam. And then each region is different and unique. When we're studying France, you know, Bordeaux, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. Burgundy is Pinot Noir. Champagne, Pinot Noir. Grapes that we come in contact with and that we're very familiar with. We talked about Sancerre being Sauvignon Blanc. So really those place names that you're familiar with. But in Italy, it's more the places like Chianti, the grape Sangiovese, or Barolo, Barbaresco, the grape Nebbiolo. So the wine styles, their history, and the locations are very different and complicated, and that's really what I love about it.
And I love that you love it, because I sure am not going to put the time, effort, or energy into learning about it like you have. And that's the beautiful thing. I don't have to, because you have an entire business and also website dedicated with different resources to help us navigate all of this.
I really do enjoy helping people find wines that they really like. And occasionally people will take a cruise in Europe, which next time people should come with us, and we can give you information about that. But and they come back and they're excited about the wines that they had, and they want to try them again. And I love helping them. I may not be able to find that exact winery, but I can help you find something very similar, and they shouldn't have to worry about it. You know, take a picture of the label, and I can help you find anything that's at least close.
And I'm sure that's something that's evolved through your 40-plus year career as well, because back in 1982, you're not snapping a picture of a wine bottle and tracking it down somewhere. It was much harder back then.
It really was. And Italian wines were, I mean, we had Chianti. Remember in the baskets? I don't know if people will remember the basket Chiantis. Don't really make those anymore. But it was Bordeaux and Champagne and Burgundy that was most familiar back then. To me, these places, I never dreamed I would actually go, and now I've been there. And so now it's a little bit more real to me. But, you know, it's still, these are still some of the most important wine locations in the world.
And something that's awesome about you, and you mentioned it, you lead these true once-in-a-lifetime trips for people. Will you describe some of the cruises that you have done?
My wife, Mary, and I will be going on our 4th AMA Waterways cruise. We work with Altair Travel, the wonderful folks at Altair Travel. They help us to set up the cruise, and it's a wine cruise. This one is going to be on the Danube. We'll start in Hungary and go through Vienna and into Prague. But we've also gone to Germany, and we've been to France on wine cruise and Portugal. Mm-hmm. And I teach classes on the boat, which is so much fun. So while the boat is traveling down the river, here I am, we're tasting wine, and I'm talking about vineyards that we're looking at as we pass through them. And then I do some dinners, and then I'm with people for the excursions. And people say, well, what if I don't like wine? Well, do you like beer, cocktails? I can speak to other parts of the industry as well. So there's really something for everybody. Mm-hmm. And as much knowledge as you want, and when there's too much, you can tell me to stop.
And you mentioned the spirits and the beer. You are growing yourself more into that industry too, especially online, I understand.
I have a resource that's going to be launched in June that I'm working with 2 other educators, one in Chicago who's a master of whiskey, one of only 8 masters of whiskey in the world, and another gentleman on the East Coast, and we're launching an education resource called Cork and Cask Academy, mm-hmm. and it's going to be an online learning resource. Now, when I say that, you don't have to have any knowledge, and they're really short and fun and very visually appealing. So it's just gaining a little bit of knowledge about wine and spirits, so whiskey and tequila, mm-hmm. Through these modules that we're going to be launching in June. And maybe on Great Day, if you have me, I'll come back and show a little bit more about it when people can actually see it.
Anytime. I think that's a good time to transition. We have just a few more moments together for some rapid fire questions, if
Great.
That's okay with you.
Let's do it.
Okay, we just had Mother's Day. Father's Day is coming up. Graduation, college graduation is happening. Birthdays, anniversaries. What is the best celebration wine?
Well, I mean, we always look for champagne as a great celebration. You know, where people make a mistake is they think, I'm going to buy this wine and drink it with my graduate maybe in 20 years or so. That's, I would say buy something that you can enjoy now, mm-hmm. and also try to identify what they like. Don't buy people something they think, oh, I don't like it. So if they only like sweet wine, buy them something sweet. And, buy it tailored to the person.
That's a good idea. What do you say to people who buy wine based on what the label looks like?
I think that's fine. I mean, labels do sell wine, but mm-hmm. there's a little more to the label than just the colors or the picture or the name of the winery. Always look at the alcohol content and the region where it comes from. Alcohol content can tell you sometimes that the wine is dry or sweet to make sure you can pair it with the right foods. So there is some roadmap on the label that can actually help you make that purchase.
What is the best sitting by the pool or the lake wine?
Well, usually we say white wines. We talked about my friends at Noble Ice Winery. Mm-hmm. They have a canned sangria called Swirl, which is a great float trip or pool type of wine because it comes in a can, mm-hmm. but it's made with real Missouri grapes and real fruit flavoring. It's a sangria. Mm-hmm. So that would be my pick for the summer. It's available everywhere, and it's a local product.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Swirl in a can.
Yeah.
Super cute name. It is a Tuesday, beautiful day in May. What would you open tonight for dinner?
Well, it's rosé season for me. I love rosé. Do you ever drink rosé?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I love rosé.
Tell all the men out there, especially the ones my age who would never drink pink wine, open up that pink wine and don't be afraid to walk out on your deck. Usually they're dry. Mm-hmm. There's very few sweet pink wines nowadays, but a rosé from France or Missouri mm-hmm. or from California, those are really seasonal wines for me because it goes with all kinds of different foods that we're eating now.
But you don't put them in the refrigerator, or you do?
Yes, slightly chilled.
Okay.
And, one quick thing that I interviewed a master of wine a couple of years ago. This woman to become a master of wine is really, really hard. And she mentioned that in the summertime, she would even add ice to her white wine or rosé. And once she said that, I was like, okay, you can do that. So if you're going outside and it's warm and you put a couple ice cubes, you'll never hear me criticize you.
Okay, good, because I had swim lessons last night with my 2 little kids, and it is a lot, to say the least. And we finally got home, and I'm not even going to tell you what happened in between everything. And I grabbed a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc that was out, not in the refrigerator. I opened it, and I put 2 ice cubes in, and I thought, I don't care, judge me.
Totally fine. You'll never get a judgment from me.
Good.
Do it. Do
Good.
it. You're drinking, enjoying wine. You don't want it freezing cold, but a couple of ice cubes can really help.
And then for people who are trying to enjoy red wine, but the cabs are just too much, is that okay to say, this isn't my thing?
It is completely okay.
Okay.
Have something lighter. A Pinot Noir, a red blend, something a little bit lighter is completely okay. Drink what you like. But remember that if you want to enjoy red wine, and you don't currently, always have food with it. And that's what's going to break it to the next level where you can actually enjoy that wine. Don't just pour it and have it by itself. It's going to take a lot longer that way. Make some food, whether even cheese or just a pizza or hamburger, whatever it is. Have that wine with food, and you'll start to enjoy it that way.
And then my final question, which is not even fair, your favorite wine of all time.
So that is not fair, and I like different things all the time. But I will tell you that, and I always answer it this way. My favorite class to teach is Wines of Italy, and my favorite, most eye-opening wines that I've had in my life are from Italy. Specifically, one of my favorite places is Valpolicella, which is where they make Amarone. And I just fell in love with the production method and the styles. Have you ever had an Amarone? They use dried grapes that sit and dry at the winery for 3 months before they make the wine. So that is among the most aromatic and interesting wines that I've had. So I kind of made a shortcut to answering that question.
How cool that you have been in your career over 40 years and you still seem so passionate and excited about the future, too.
I am very fortunate and blessed to be in this industry, and I will keep talking about wine until somebody tells me to stop.
Well, I'm going to tell you to stop because we are coming up against our hard out of 11:28. But Mike Ward of Ward on Wine.
Thank you.
What a treat. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And cheers, my friend. And cheers to you, St. Louis. We would love to hear from you. Any feedback on this conversation or any interesting St. Louisans that you would like to see in the hot seat where Mike is right now, I would love to hear from you. Laura.Hettiger at firstalert4.com. In the meantime, thank you for listening, thank you for learning, and thank you for being live with Laura.